Hello, everyone. My name is Derrick Jones, and I would like to welcome you to episode 3 of That's a Great Question, where we look at interesting questions found throughout the Bible, their backstories, and the lessons we can learn from them. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below to be updated on future content from this channel. And please, do feel free to leave your comments about this topic or any other feedback in the comment section. Today's question: Lord, what about him? Join me in reading the backdrop leading up to this question. In John 21:15-17, we read, "When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?' 'Yes, Lord,' he said. 'You know that I love you.' Jesus said, 'Feed my lambs.' Again Jesus said, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' He answered, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' Jesus said, 'Take care of my sheep.' The third time he said to him, 'Simon, son of John, do you love me?' Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, 'Do you love me?' He said, 'Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you.' Jesus said, 'Feed my sheep.' After Jesus was crucified, his disciples probably didn't expect to see him anymore, even though Jesus told him that he would rise from the dead. So they went back to their day jobs as fishermen, and they're out fishing and they catch no fish up to this point. That is until Jesus commands them from the shore to throw the nets down again. They catch such a large amount of fish that they realized that it was Jesus. I'm sure this reminded them of the first time when they were called, and the same thing happened. But you have to wonder about Peter and how he's feeling about right now. And maybe Peter had mixed feelings. Maybe on the one hand, he was really glad to see Jesus, and he was relieved to see that he was alive. But then on the other hand, maybe he was anxious about the fact that he denied Jesus 3 times. And was that going to come up in the conversation? It doesn't take long for the focus to turn to Peter, as Jesus began to ask him some very piercing questions about his love for him. From a casual perspective, it might seem as though Jesus is rubbing Peter's nose in his failures. But Jesus was taking Peter back to where he had failed. And I believe it's because Jesus understood that he needed to really break through that denial. And if you've ever been familiar with the 12-step program, the first step is that you must admit that you have a weakness. You see, it's important for you to acknowledge and to be willing to look at the fact that you have a weakness that's out of control, because if you're not willing to acknowledge that, then you won't be willing to put in the work that it's going to take to change it. Peter's weakness was pride. He had a very big chip on his shoulder, and it showed in that he claimed to be better than the other apostles. He claimed to love Jesus even more than the other apostles. And so Jesus had to really help him to really deal with that. Let's continue to read in John 21, verses 18-23. "Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. When Peter saw him, he asked, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus answered, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me." Because of this, the rumor spread among the believers that this disciple would not die. But Jesus did not say he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You see, Jesus is in the process of reinstating Peter for a very, very essential role. And he needed to make sure that Peter was up to the task. Did you catch that he told him to feed his sheep and feed his lamb? It's as if Jesus is about to entrust the church into Peter's hands. And so it necessitates this very difficult and uncomfortable conversation. He predicted that Peter's life will essentially end in death, and I think things became a bit uncomfortable for Peter at that point. So he commanded Peter to follow him. As Peter asked about John and what will become of John, who seemed to be getting off the hook. After all, he denied Jesus as well and took off along with the other apostles. You see, Peter wasn't really as concerned about John as we might believe. I think Peter was probably feeling very uncomfortable with this spotlight. And just like an octopus that ejects a stream of ink-like substance into the water when it's feeling threatened in order for it to hide and escape, I think Peter probably wanted to deflect some of this tension away from him and have the other disciples and apostles held accountable as well. Isn't it human nature to detect and focus on other people's issues? It's a lot easier to see what they're doing wrong more than it is for us to see our own wrongdoings. And we may even secretly want them to get their comeuppance. And we may even, unfortunately, be guilty of gloating in their downfalls or happy to hear about someone else's downfall. The thing here, though, is that Jesus calls us back to focus on ourselves and the need to change ourselves before we can really be effective at helping someone else. Put it another way, he calls us to take the plank out of our own eyes before we can see the speck in someone else's eyes. He reminds us to be careful about judging others, lest we be judged by the same standards that we hold others to. In Ephesians 2:10, we read, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus, to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." The really encouraging thing about this story is that even though Peter had really felt Jesus in a major way, Jesus still had an amazing plan for his life. God has specific and personal plans for us as well. And he's equipped us with specific talents, gifts, and abilities that are key to fulfilling his purposes for our lives. But the important thing is that we must be willing to deal with our own issues. It doesn't mean that we don't help others as we mature, but we can't become so focused on what others are doing that we don't deal with the things in our own lives. I hope this devotional has been edifying to your faith, and I hope that you'll share it with someone else who might be in need of it. My prayer for you is that the Lord will bless you and keep you, and may he cause his face to shine upon you. And until the next episode, peace.